So I was working with artists. I had this gallery. I had this vision, and I started to build my catalog of artists, my catalog of collectors, and my catalog of artworks that I was making available for folks. And since then, I've done 12 independent shows, and that was 3 years, including a pandemic, and that's all like with no major funding, just kind of like this idea to create a third space. I think in a very real way, the spirit of the row houses deeply fueled my desire to support artists in a new capacity. Although I would never have been able to do that, staying within the institution, because that's one of the problems, when you have the institution as the hub, even if it's a beautiful institution like the row houses, it's still not open completely to artist direction. So when I started Like Buddha, it made me accessible in a way that I hadn't been previously. Like I was saying, I was able to allow the artists to like transform me into who they wanted me to be. Um, and so yeah, the biggest idea was that I was inviting people by programming moments that you would not typically see programmed into a fine arts exhibition, whether it's like a DJ, or whether it's a dance class, or whether it's a lawyer's information session about art and law, or like tax classes. We did all kinds of different things just to get people in the room. And then in those moments, I would institute programs like, art financing and payment plans, and all these different ways to just make it easy for people. I think also because I was using alternative spaces similar to, the row houses, and like removing the barrier that all you have to do is just walk through this door. You don't know what this building is. It doesn't have any like history that you might be like turned off by. You're just kind of open to the experience, and then you're experiencing it, and it's like, oh, okay, this is really cool. This art is really great. And you have an event in 2 days. Like, I would love to be there, So I was just able to use all of these lessons and just kind of turn them into what they needed to be, without the institution, without kind of the weight of a permanent space. So I was in that gallery for about 8 months, and then I left and did more shows at different galleries, different spaces around Houston. And like I said, since I did my first show in June of 2017. And I just did my last show in January of 2021. So, and they could not be more different. I think my first show had like 5 artists and like 15 pieces in it. This last show had almost 40 artists and like 150 pieces in it, and 5 murals. And it was in a 23,000 square foot gallery space in downtown Houston, and it was incredible. Rick was in my show. Jesse, I've shown most of the founding members of Project Row Houses, Floyd Newsum, George Smith. Uh, I've shown, almost every major artist out of Houston, actually. So that it's been really incredible, and I was able to, make a lot of relationships being at the row houses. But beyond that, just kind of coming from that background, because I mean, all of the best artists in Houston. And sorry to anyone that didn't work at the row houses, but for the most part, every major artist that come out of Houston has some kind of a connection to Project Row Houses. So the exposure was huge, and it brought a lot of people together, and it really I mean, it's changed in an uncountable amount of lives, truly.
Wow, I really think it's very kind of appealing, this idea of thinking differently, about collecting and the importance of supporting the artist. And in a way, you have been doing this kind of thinking in alternative ways to really, get the art closer to all kinds of audiences. I really, it's a real challenge to bring the people to the galleries. And I think the way that you are doing in itself, it's becoming this idea that you mentioned, like this kind of engagement, or collecting with certain kind of engagement as well with the art, but as well with the artists and the people that you are supporting. In a sense, it's like you are opening up this kind of line to really develop this the cycle of the art, or like the economy that it's needed for the arts to survive in a way, in a more engaged way. So I really think it's even kind of blurring with a social engaged art project, the the idea, of the Black Buddha, I
Yeah.
think. So it's really, I think it's really impressive. I would love to go more deep in your programming and check your exhibitions. Do you have materials online?
I do. I do. I'll send you the website, but you can see some of the photos. I actually, it's been really crazy because, I mentioned I did that show in January, but that's also when I started working for Rick. So I was doing like the biggest show of my career. Meanwhile, starting working for like, an international genius who has 3 projects around the country opening all within 6 weeks from each other. And so, I have all these materials, these like amazing materials from the show, and I need to upload them to the website. But I think this is like an ongoing issue with like artists and creatives. Like we have all this amazing content, and we just need to do something with it.
Time to work on it as well, no? And reflect about it. And just
Right. But
because,
but the website is blackbuddha.agency. And so there's photos of my early shows on each one, but it's the most recent one that I need to upload because we got this like great 3D documentation of it. So, but I can send that in a link too. So I'll make sure that you can kind of see what I've got going on that front.
yes, I would love it. Thank you. And just because you mentioned as well, like this idea of that you connect as well with the history of the Project Row houses. And that's something that I wanted to ask you as well. It's about the fact that the project has been running already for more than 30 years, and it's impressive. But we had the opportunity to discuss a bit with Rick Lowe about that. We asked him as the initiator about his, like sense of why maybe, or what were the key points for the sustainability of the project. But I wanted to ask you as user. So how you feel that maybe what are the key points for the project to be so sustainable?
Can you ask that question again? The connection
Yes.
skipped
So
for a moment.
yeah, exactly. So no, I was asking that if from your perspective as user of the project row houses, what do you think are the key points of the sustainability of the project?
I'm learning from Rick that one of the key points of sustainability of the project is being adaptable, and responding, like being responsive to the needs of the community. So, I mentioned the Young Mothers program, and that program was developed out of a need from the community. I mentioned the EEDC. That program was developed out of a need of the community. So the organization has a long-standing history of listening what's going on in their immediate area and then changing the core of what they're doing as an organization. So, they could easily say, we only do art, and if it's not something that I can look at, it's not coming out of this space. They could keep their walls up. They could build the walls high. They could build a beautiful white picket fence around all of the nice row houses. They could keep everything so crystal clean that people are afraid to step on it, but they don't do that. They don't do that, and they're always constantly changing, and that is how you stay alive for 30 years. You have to survive, and we know that as people because look at what happened in the last year and a half. We all were put in this moment where it's like, okay, do we change our careers? Do we sit at home? And if we are sitting at home, do we learn something new? Do we try something different? Like, how do we respond to this new life space, you know? And so I don't know. I think that as an institution, the row houses has a strong history of just going with the flow and being a leader of the flow. You know, they have to change. You know, and honestly, following the pandemic, the row house is going to go through another transition. And you know, I can't speak too much on what exactly that will be, but I do know that it's going to happen, and I see it happening in real time. You know, I still only live a mile away, which it's so funny. This is the last thing I'll say, but like in New York, 1 mile is like 20 miles in Texas. You know, it's so incredible because it's so easy to move around in Houston. Like when I say 1 mile, that's like a 3-minute drive. 1 mile in New York, it's like a 30-minute drive. But anyways, yeah, so, you know, I still drive past the row houses every day and I see what's going on, and, you know, I stay in touch with people. I also mentioned, like, you know, everybody that I used to work with there is no longer there. So I'm you know, I have my ideas, but the more important thing is truly that, you know, the organization has to be a living organism. The only way to stay alive is to genuinely stay alive, you know, and to not become stagnant, to not try to continue to do the same thing, you know. Rick said something to me the other day that like really had me scratching my head, but he was like, you know, these artist rounds, they've become just the same, you know. And this is no knock to any of the artists, obviously, because I know each artist puts their heart into it, but you know, the old like saying, like, there's nothing new under the sun. They've had hundreds and hundreds, at this point thousands of installations, and it's time to make a change in how, you know, artists engage with those houses. And so we got into like a really interesting discussion about that, but it prompted, and see, I'm kind of cheating right now too, because it prompted Rick to like send me a letter where he talks about the key of the row house as being its ability to adapt to change, and to respond to the needs of the neighborhood and the industry even. So I did kind of use a little of Rick's language just now, but it's true. And you know, for me as a user of the organization, because, you know, I was able, like, I was working, but I was also collaborating because I didn't know anything. I mean, that's just the bottom line. You know, all I knew how to do was manage and organize and plan. And so I had to learn art. You know, I had to learn engagement. I had to learn Third Ward. I had to learn Houston. I had to learn artists. And so the organization itself, I mean, it's just completely alive. You can't control who's sitting on those benches. You know, you can't control who walks in those doors to get a glass of water. You can't control who walks into those houses to just see what they are. And so as a result of that, when you're walking around as someone who's very informed and knows what it is, you're allowed to have these experiences that can't really be captured anywhere else because the art is there. It's just an integral part of these people's lives. You know, they live it. And so when you're experiencing it as someone who, you know, doesn't live in Third Ward or just is there to visit the row houses, it just becomes this very organic experience. So even when institutionally the row houses don't change, fundamentally they do, and experientially they do as well, and they always are telling a story. So it's probably a little conceptual, but for the people that are in Houston, they know what I'm saying.
No, but I really like that you are always already, you know, thinking about the project. Like the project row houses has become an institution. It's an institution, in fact, uh, and this idea of the continuous changing, you know, like the evolving, that the need to evolve and to really adapt to the needs of the community. I think it's a very fundamental point. And actually, just what you
Yeah.
mentioned, I just, you know, you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, it's kind of funny because we are always, when we are talking about arte útil, you know, useful art, we are always telling this idea of the usership that means in fact that you cannot control the use. It's there, and you cannot really, you know, try to put, you know, kind of walls or borders to the way that the people is going to use these projects, or the way that the people is going to use the archive in this with the association. And we are always, you know, thinking in terms of that. In fact, use as well, it's coming together with misuse, and you have to take that risk as well, because it's part of the thing. You cannot control, you cannot really put any order to that. So I think it's really, for me, it's very inspiring to think about this idea of even the project itself leaving a little bit like the completely openness to the community to bringing new ideas and use, you know, the project differently. I think it's
Absolutely.
Yeah. So wow.
Incredible.
Yeah. So India, I don't want to take more of your time. We have been already discussing for a while, but I really want to thank you. It's been super rich, I think, the conversation, and I'm willing just to closing this conversation to go to check your the website and all the reference that you gave us. So thank you. And hopefully, maybe, as I like to say, maybe in 10 years, someone else from the Association of Arte Útil wants to get in touch with you to discuss about how your projects are doing, and, you know, how we see the project row houses at that moment. So it would be really nice to have the opportunity to keep following in time, you know, these projects and giving more insight, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll have a lot of incredible stories to share in 10 years about the row houses and our connection. You know, all the art comes back home eventually. So I'm really looking forward to the next 10 years, you know, working with Rick, and still being in Third Ward and still working with artists, and still kind of thinking of that space as home is you know, it is a privilege. So I'm really thankful that you have started my New York day, reminding me of how I started with these, you know, with these great questions, these really well thought out questions. It's you know, it's a real privilege to just be in the arts in this capacity. So, you know, I'm very thankful. And and I really enjoy this. I'm feeling really sentimental right now.
That's good. Me too. For me, it's always it's really a privilege to have the opportunity to discuss with, you know, the users of the projects, because it's really gives you a completely different perspective, and it's more real. I think it feels really, you know, like you are really touching some issues that I could never imagine, because I think it helps, these conversations in a way helps to get closer to the projects in that sense. I hope.
Yeah, absolutely.